Welcome to Bat Therapy, psychology of Batman, superheroes, and other comic book characters. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We are your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources.
All right. So I am really excited about this one because it is a book series that I've always really loved, and Disney finally made it into a miniseries. And this is your first time ever delving in. Like, you never read the books or anything.
Nope. Percy Jackson is brand new to me.
Yes. So yes, we're going to be talking about the first season of Percy Jackson and the Olympians on Disney Plus. So if you have read the books, just know there will be some stuff left out because we're only talking about what happens in the television series, not the two movies that came out that everyone wants to pretend didn't happen. They did, though. Sorry, you're gonna have to deal. And yeah,
There's so much to this.
Oh yeah, yes. So there were two Percy Jackson movies that released, and the thing is that the first movie was not the worst. It was way different from the book, and so that was automatically offensive for many.
You gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, but the reason I did not mind it was because I saw the movie first and then read the book later. And so I appreciated that movie for what it was, and it did its best. The second movie did not do its best. It didn't even try. It deserves no place in anyone's heart. And
Yikes.
yeah. And so, but this series sticks a lot closer to the books. They still change some things, but in my opinion, it's minimal. And so yeah, I really do love this series, and the first season only covered the first book.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering that. I kind of assumed it was a season to book comparison, especially how it wrapped up and everything.
Yes.
So, okay, here's where I want to start with this. You're a teacher.
Yeah.
Did you think the teachers were as terrible in this show as I did?
Yes.
Okay, because they seemed awful. So here's this kid who actually psychologically very interesting. Okay, so here's this kid who essentially is seeing and hearing things that other people around him aren't, and he's reacting to these things at times. And he's a tough kid to fit within the school system. So his mom's like really struggling to like help him find his place. I think he's at like a boarding school or something. And his mom's just desperately trying to figure out how to best help him. And he's getting bullied. And then he stands up to the bully because no one is keeping the bullies from bullying him. And then he gets in trouble with all the teachers and I'm like, what is going on here? It's bad.
Who gets kicked out of school for pushing someone in water?
Also, yeah.
Like, expelled? Like, really?
I thought so too. That was a bit.
And here's another issue that I have, and I have it with some of his teachers and his mom. So this kid is definitely different. He's a demigod. He sees things that other people cannot see. And he more or less lives, up until this show takes place, he lives his life thinking there's something wrong with him.
Yes.
The people around him know there's not anything wrong with him.
Or like, well, the mean bully kids don't know
The
what's
mean
going
bully
on,
kids
but
don't know, but Kyron, like basically one of his teachers at the
yeah,
school,
mhm,
he
mhm,
knows. His
yep,
mom knows,
yep,
and he's coming up thinking there's something wrong with me, and there isn't. And I just really did not like that
yeah,
because I just felt like even though he's young and he is very impressionable, he deserves to at least know, hey, what you saw,
yeah.
it was actually there. Just
Which
try and keep
which
it to yourself.
which I'm gonna split hairs a little bit because I know what you're kind of talking about here. Um, but also, like, there are kids who do see and hear things
Right,
that are not there, and they're having to maneuver life and whatnot. And so, when you're saying, hey, and I do think he's thinking to himself and he's feeling there's something wrong with me. But a lot of times I think people have changed the verbiage with some of this stuff to, hey, it's more, there's something different that
right,
makes this person stand out. And it's not something wrong, but it's something that we need to adjust for because
right.
your brain is built different, or you have certain things that might make life harder for you. And so, yeah, he essentially starts on this path, and I agree with you that it's an odd choice to not let him in earlier.
Yes. His best
About,
friend is half goat and just
you know,
and
I'm
snitch and lying on him too. Like the first episode was rough. It was rough
yeah,
because yeah, Grover just like, yeah, he did it. And he's just looking at him like,
dude,
dude,
I
what
know.
the hell?
Okay, okay. So for anyone who needs a refresher here, okay, so you've got this kid and he doesn't know he's a demigod and they see
Right.
in real stuff. So he essentially thinks, okay, I have a mental health diagnosis. I see things, I hear things. There's things different about me in a non-demigod kind of way.
Yes.
And and so he only has like the one friend Grover, and he's trying to make it through school, and school is rough because kids can be mean. I mean, not that adults can be any better, as we see with his teachers.
Right.
But anyway, um, but he's maneuvering life as best he can, and yeah, essentially he is reacting to these things that no one else is seeing. So he thinks he's reacting to things within his mind when actually he's reacting to like mystical god stuff
Things
that
that
no
are
one else.
actually there.
Right. So he thinks these things are actually there. He doesn't know yet that they are. Um, and then at the end, essentially I forget what it is. I think his water powers happen or something, and it like
Hmm.
a kid gets pushed into the fountain or something.
Yes.
And then for some reason, the school takes this way more seriously than all of the terrible bullying he's been through. And his friend essentially tells on him.
Yeah.
And that might be how the first episode ends.
Yeah.
Is like
It
he gets
well,
told on by
well,
his
he gets
friend.
told on, and then I think the first episode does actually end with him like killing the Minotaur and passing out.
Oh, so it goes all the way to,
Hmm.
okay, 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 okay.
Yeah, it goes
But
all
then
the way
then
through the
he
setup. Yeah,
okay, so like then he finds out his friend's a goat, half goat. There's a lot.
which
There's a
it
lot
is
that.
funny when you are in a situation and you immediately kind of squash whatever is going on because there's something so much larger at stake.
Yeah.
It is funny when stuff like that happens. Like if you're in an argument with a friend or even your significant other,
Mm,
and it's like y'all are at odds, but then something else happens to kind of both
yeah.
completely get over that
Yep.
because this is going on. Like
Yeah.
it's like, yes, your best friend lied on you, and you're really upset about that. And now he's half goat, and there is a minotaur in underpants chasing you down the road.
Yeah, that does he
Percy rolls with the punches. That's his superpower.
that is his superpower. So, yeah, I agree with you that not sharing what was going on with him. earlier was an odd choice. So this is one of those things that happens, and it's very tricky, but parents can end up in these situations of there's something very serious going on that either is directly happening to the child or it's directly impacting the child in some way. And at what point do you share? And it is a tricky balance because um there is something to be said for being understanding what's going on. And I would say that, so I know we don't always use the word crazy, but Percy Jackson probably has times where he feels that sense of like, I
Yes.
must be crazy.
Yes.
And I'm using that term very purposely here because sometimes, just like some of the things that are happening to him that don't make sense, and all this stuff is like coming all together. Um, and things could have made more sense to him. Would it have removed these issues from his life? No, but he would have handled them maybe better.
And he would
Probably.
and he would be a little bit more trustworthy because so many people
Yeah.
around him are just lying to him. Because when the mom is like, "Oh yeah, I rented this beach place every year because this is where I met your father," and when she did immediately go into like more detail on that, it's like, okay, who was my dad? Was he one of the bank robbers from Point Break that surfed on the side? Like, you're not telling me
And
anything. Like, what's
and
happening right now?
and so yeah, that is a good point. So here is this person who, what I find most interesting about him, and they kind of later explain that his father didn't want him to know so that he wouldn't have some of the personality struggles, shall we say, of many gods and demigods, and just s- uh, y- when you have that much power, I think he didn't want a homelander on his hands,
So,
essentially.
and here's what's funny. They did not go into, I don't think they went into this in the first season. It's something they talk about, I think, in the books more. But basically the big three, so Poseidon, Hades, and
Mm,
Zeus, all basically made a pact like no more having kids.
yeah,
No more having kids. It's too risky when the big three have a kid. Zeus and Poseidon break the rules. The
mm.
only one who doesn't is Hades.
Man, Hades getting a bad rap,
He gets a
with
bad rap.
hell and
He's the
stuff.
best in this.
Yeah, he
He really
followed the
is.
rules, damn it.
He's the healthiest of all of them by far.
I would be Hades in this situation because I'd be like, man, we made a pact.
Yeah.
And I
Also,
followed the rules, and
way
now
too
I'm
much
screwed.
way too much family drama. I'm gonna stay over here. It's
Yeah,
great here.
that's
Like
true. That's true.
I do love I do love Hades in this series because you're right. He does normally get a bad rap
That's
because
true.
I'm not gonna lie.
Because death is
Yeah.
scary. So
Yeah.
we
And
yeah.
plus, normally when you think Hades, you think about like hell and the devil and James Woods.
Mm.
And,
Or you
and
think of the like
so,
three-headed dog thing.
oh yeah, it's Cerberus. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's one of those things you just, he's naturally, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
yikes, Hades, oh no. But it's different here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's here's the what I find so interesting about Percy is he goes from one extreme to the other very quickly. So he goes from being an outcast, from being someone who's trying to constantly be invisible and hide his reactions and not be noticed. And whenever you are noticed, it's a really bad thing. And essentially seeing himself as not being good at pretty much anything. And also he sees his mom as very loving, but also being limited in how she can help him. And he has this one friend, right? He's very limited in the people he has. He was abandoned
mhm.
by his dad from the get go, slingshot in a day or less. And he finds out, okay, I'm a demigod. Here I am with all these other demigods. Once again, he's not claimed, but eventually he finds out he's one of the like big three's kids.
Yeah,
And he's a rarity. And then he has these water powers, and so he just slingshots all the way to the other end of things where all of a sudden he is wanted and desired and sought after in good and bad ways, granted, very powerful being able to do things that most everyone else can't do, going on a quest, all this different stuff.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting shift. It's happening very suddenly for him. And th- what's nice is you get to see these very warm, caring human things
Hmm.
about him that he was able to develop, even though he went through a lot of really tough stuff as a kid.
And it seems like he was able to develop it because of the tough stuff that he went through.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when he does get thrust into this situation where everything is like about honor and glory, he's like, I
Mhm.
literally don't care about any of that. I just want my mom back. You're half goat.
Yep.
I know this chick doesn't like me, but she's clearly super smart. I'm just trying to survive. I really do not care about honor or glory or this circle of people. And I guess I'm at a family camp because we're all technically related since it's the Greek gods.
I
And
know, and
like,
it's like, so we're just supposed to play games to look cool, and
why do
yeah,
we have
it's a weird.
swords? Why are we
Yeah.
children with weapons? I want to know. It's really funny because young adult and like teen books
Mm.
are all about child soldiers, right? Like you have the Hunger Games
Often.
and
Yeah.
Harry Potter and Percy Jackson. Like there's so many of them where it's like, oh wow, these are okay. These are kids just fighting wars. That's cool. This is fun. This is great. I mean, and but
Yeah.
it's always been a thing. I mean, Power Rangers, they were high schoolers, you know. They like it's
Yeah.
yeah, it goes on and on. And so here's just another thing, and Disney did such a good job glossing over it because they're fighting with real spears and real
Mm.
swords and real bow
And
and
they're told
arrows.
not to maim each other.
And I'm like, okay, none of these are Nerf weapons.
No.
It's not like LARPing. It's real. And they're wearing t-shirts.
Yeah. Mhm.
And
Yeah, and they're trying to, like, prove their honor, but don't maim anyone, and, of course, the
yeah,
one chick immediately is like, "Well, I'm gonna do whatever I want,"
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, and the teachers are just kind of sitting back. Like one teacher is like frantically trying to get his hands on alcohol, which
yeah.
I do. Jason Mantzoukas, I absolutely love him. He was perfectly cast as Dionysus,
Oh
and
god, yes. When I
yes,
every time I hear his voice, I'm like, "Oh, I know who this
oh
is,
yeah, absolutely,
yay!"
yeah, because he voices one of the people in Invincible. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, and
Oh,
so yeah,
yeah. I'm always so happy when I hear his voice,
yes,
and that's
absolutely.
it's always the voice
Hmm.
that, like, it seems to lead his character and, like, everything. Yeah, I love him. I
But
agree
going
that Dionysus, perfect
But
casting.
going on to him, Percy just does not have anyone he can fully trust,
Yeah.
but he's still very trusting. He's still very
Mm.
trusting because, like, as soon as he gets to the camp, he's like, I'm looking for my dad. Dionysus immediately is like, I'm your dad. Just go get me some wine.
Oh my god, that was so
and, and Kyron
poor
comes up and
Percy.
he was like, this guy's definitely not your dad. We don't know who your dad is, but we know it's not him. And Percy's like, oh, okay, okay. And then now he's sitting at a lunch table and they're like, okay, whatever you don't eat, we burn it to honor the gods. And it's like, what?
It's a
What is
very
happening
weird
right
shift
now?
that and two, I think that's um a really great example too. So he not only has this huge shift in terms of adapting to, okay, who am I? And you even see, like, he needs help in being able to see himself as being capable even once he knows, oh, I'm a demigod. So for a lot of people that might be like, okay, where's my skill set? Ooh. But for him, he it takes some convincing. He's kind of got to fumble into figuring out, wow, okay, so I can do this and I'm
Yeah.
good at these things. But then there's also this huge culture shift. It's like he's going to a different country.
Yes.
I mean, there's, yeah, your parents, the interesting dynamic with the godparents that everyone else just takes for granted. He's like, this is really strange, y'all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very separate and how you communicate is different. You've got to essentially send smoke signals, and then hopefully they'll listen to you. And yeah, it's a whole different way of life that he's introduced. And his father specifically did not want him to be in that for as long as possible. Interestingly, Poseidon wanted him to have a human existence for as long as he could, even though
Yeah.
it actually amped up the risk factor for this kid like
Right. It was
so high.
worse. It was worse.
Yeah.
And that is something that happens all the time when you keep secrets from people, and it ends up
Yeah.
being worse in the long run because suddenly he's thrust into a borderline cult from the outside looking in.
I mean, he could have been born into it though. That's not necessarily great either.
Don't worry, Percy. It'll get better tomorrow. You'll get to choose two people. One you just was your best friend and you just found out he's half goat. The other one just pushed you into the water to see if it proved a point. And the three of you are going to travel to LA together because, of course, that's where the gates of hell are. And
Oh yeah.
it's
Have
like,
you
oh,
know I mean
and we're
like
gone and we're off.
oh yeah. I mean the gates of hell, hell mouths, yeah, all that stuff. California, LA,
LA.
it's always
Yeah.
gotta be at the
Yeah.
center.
Lucifer. Lucifer is in LA.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Takes place there. Takes
All
place
that
there.
good stuff. Yeah.
And so, yeah, he's really, really good at rolling with the punches, but also, and we've seen it with heroes before, he's locked in on tunnel vision because he's like, I don't
Mhm.
really care about the war. I don't really care about the bolt. I want to get my mom back.
It takes him until he's got to see that there's more than the main adventure that he's supposedly on. And he starts
Hmm.
seeing, wait a minute, this isn't all making sense. And then he starts realizing this is much bigger than people just beating on their chest to see, who's the biggest baddie. There's something bigger happening. And then he as he goes, he does have that, becoming a hero thing going on for him. Cause yeah, he does start very focused on it's about my mom
Hmm.
and it's about getting her back. And you guys are doing your thing, whatever. I'll do what I need you to do to get there. And he happens to be saving people along the way because he's a good person, right?
Right.
But yeah, as he goes, he starts getting more of a picture of, okay, yeah, they're playing a game with each other, but it has real repercussions for the world.
Right.
I have to do more than focus on my mom.
Yes. And I will say this before we go on, one thing that I noticed as a teacher that I did
Mm,
not like, not only as a teacher, but as a camp counselor from the past. I spent 12 years as a camp counselor.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
If there are kids that habitually and basically and literally in their blood that they want to fight, like Aries
Yeah.
kids,
Yep.
you don't, you do something about that. They're
Yeah.
clearly aggressive. They clearly exhibit different behaviors than the other kids because in this world you end up not only exhibiting characteristics of your parents, you also act like them. And
Mm,
Aries kids tend to kind of be bullies a little bit and they
yeah.
do away with it later on, but for the sake of needing a bully in this first
Mhm.
season, Clarice is clearly
Yeah.
a bully. She openly threatens him. And it's one of those things like, okay, why are there no teachers around? And it's something that unfortunately does actually happen. There's so many
Mm,
times where teachers are not around when they need to be or they're not paying attention and schools are horribly understaffed,
yeah.
but it always just bothers me whenever there's a camp counselor or a teacher that just is not paying attention to something blatantly happening
Yeah. Yeah.
in the open.
Yeah. It's kind of I guess it's so my thing is they always show therapists having sex with their clients, which is terrible.
Right.
And so for camp counselors and teachers, I guess it's like you're totally oblivious and you let all sorts of terrible stuff
Right.
happen.
How many
Yeah,
times,
it's
yeah,
ugh,
how many times have we seen in a movie or TV show a kid will be stuck in a locker just beating the locker and it's
Oh,
always
yeah.
another student that comes and gets them out. It's never once a teacher that's like,
Mm,
"Hey, who did this to you?"
yeah. Well, and that's a that I mean, that happened for him both in the human world.
Right.
So when the teachers did react or when the principal or other people did react, it was actually to punish him for a response
Yeah.
to the treatment he was getting. Or there were times too where it was potentially like other factors going on for him where treatment would actually be the appropriate response,
Yeah.
rather than expelling or secluding from other people, or right.
Yeah.
So they have that. So he essentially has them acting, but in not a helpful way in the human world. And then he goes to his demigod camp, and then yeah, it's kind of a
See you on the
hands,
battlefield.
yeah, hands off, but only
Yeah.
after we've handed you weapons, kind of like weird situation.
Yeah. Yeah. But
It's yeah, it's definitely like it definitely seems to be encouraging the personification of their godly parents.
yeah. Yeah. It's very hands off, and it just doesn't seem like, honestly, I would, if it were me and I had to set up a demigod camp,
Mm,
depending on who the kids' parents were, I might have several different camps. I might
mm,
have several different camps, and you would have interactions where they all could interact with each other. But these are kids that are figuring out their emotions, that are figuring out their
mm.
lives. They need some time to just figure themselves out.
Oh, sure, sure, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They need some time to
So
figure themselves out. And I think it would be better if they figured it out with the same, basically their brothers and sisters, and then gravitate them towards interacting with everyone
mm,
else.
maybe.
No?
So I think that could end you up in a worse spot,
Okay.
because whenever I think about these sorts of things, I think back to this experiment they did at a kids camp,
Okay.
where they essentially randomly split them into, I think, like the red and the blue camps, and they pitted them against each other. Now, granted, you're talking about like, let's not fight or anything, let's figure out our stuff and then we come together. But they essentially like pitted them against each other in a bunch of games and stuff. Things became vehement. They hated each other. And the way they got them getting along was, I think they essentially broke things around the camp, and they had to get together, and cooperate together to get things working again. So,
Okay.
the plumbing or
Now,
cooking or whatever. And so I totally agree with you that, just throwing people into all these, prove yourself kinds of things isn't really helpful. But I also wonder if you split them even more, because they're so divided already, like, does that help? Or from the get-go, would it help to kind of mix them with other houses
now
so
that
that
would,
they
I would, that would also be kind of, would be probably better.
yeah.
Like, oh, because right now there's 12 cabins.
Yep.
Well, they end up saying that there's more because there's some of the lower gods that also
Okay.
father kids. So there's and have kids. But there are at least 12 major cabins. Percy's just in a cabin by himself. He
I
just
know, how
has
sad
this.
was that?
All right, as an only child, I was like, yo, that's what's up.
But
I
you're
was
at
super
camp.
excited. And
I
it was
know this
water
is
themed. He basically had a beach house all to himself.
okay, I hear you. But also, it's like supposed to be camp themed, and then you go all by yourself. You don't get to have a slumber party with any of your friends. I don't
Yeah,
know. I thought it was a little sad, but
yeah, that's true. He
yeah,
could invite people over, right? It's not like
I
Dracula where you
guess.
can't enter unless.
I guess that's true. I guess that's true. Yeah, I think that what could have helped was actually what he so the unclaimed in some ways had an advantage. So I forget whose house they went into.
I think it was it Hermes?
Yes, I think it was Hermes who had
Yeah.
taken the unclaimed. So Hermes' house seemed to have, some no. I mean, granted, obviously, like later on, you find out things aren't so great in that house,
Right.
but it's a house that seems to get along well with others. And now
Hmm.
part of that might be self-selection, right? So Hermes was the one that opened himself up to the unclaimed children, so they might have personality traits in common with just being accepting. But then also in taking in the unclaimed, you are in fact e- essentially doing what we were talking about, right? You're getting a blend of the different kids, and that's going to help you be more aware and appreciative of differences that might come from like different gods
Right.
versus getting really honed into your specific parent, and then who knows how much competition's going on between you and your siblings.
Right. Because one thing I was going to ask you with that study where they split the two
Mm,
kids into groups, did they compete against each other in things? Like, what is it
yeah.
that made
Yeah.
the hostility? Okay.
Yeah. So they were competing, and exactly, they had them doing all sorts of like different games and whatnot. And so, I mean, really, what they're doing at this camp is they really are hyping up that separation based on your house.
Right.
So it, and I mean, I guess they combined at certain points where they like combined houses to do like some of the larger games and whatnot, and they were all like mixing together at different times. But there's a very competitive nature that, granted, is realistic for this whole demigod kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, if you're trying to not have another war on Earth that happens due to gods and demigods, maybe not the best route.
I
And
have
so
several
Percy,
questions about this camp.
I know, right? But yeah, like Percy, he's he's an enigma. He's completely different. He gets plopped in the middle, and it stirs everything up and helps prevent World War III. At least that's kind of how they talk about it. So
Hmm.
I'm on board with him. I think, I mean, this kid learned really fast. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And
hey,
he, like I said, if his top superpower is rolling with the punches, because they're like, all right, you
mm,
have to go talk to the oracle or the seers. And it's like, okay. And the oracle took the form of my emotionally abusive stepfather.
yep.
That's thanks. That's great. Yep, that's exactly what I need
I
right
mean,
now.
of
I'm
all
just
the
gonna roll with it.
choices,
Right. I'm just gonna roll with it. Okay, now I'm
yeah.
being attacked by my teacher who turned out to be
Mm-hmm.
a winged minion of Hades. All right, just gonna keep rolling with it. All right, now a lady on the train has a giant tiger animal that's chasing me and also poisonous and breathes fire. Just gonna keep rolling with the punches. Okay, I can
Mm-hmm.
breathe underwater. That doesn't help me with the fire breathing thing, but okay. Okay, that's cool. All right.
No, now hold on. You can spend as much time under that water as you need
I'll give
while
you
it breathes
that.
fire. And theoretically, unless that magic fire can just pierce through water,
Okay,
there you go.
did you pick up on every time Percy was in water was a straight up mindfulness moment? Did you catch like every time he was underwater, it's like, all right, I'm gonna get my composure here. I'm gonna get
Hey!
my composure underwater. And it's like, oh, good.
Hey.
And it's funny because it worked out well that it was Poseidon's kid. He had been
Yep.
Zeus's kid. Does he have to catch a plane every time he wants peace? Like it was like it was one of those things. It's like, what does this mean? But like he's just rolling with the punches and just
Hmm.
taking things, he takes things in stride
Yep.
so well. And it doesn't seem like I applauded the fact that he didn't really have this wild breaking point where he just
Mm.
gets like he gets upset, but he's still just like, okay, we're gonna figure this. We got to figure this out. We got to
Yeah.
figure this out. He's a great kid. He's a great kid. He is.
Yeah.
And I also like how he contrasts with with Annabeth, because Annabeth is
Mm.
really locked in on the for glory, for honor, Athena's my mom. And her being around him, even though she's supposed to easily be like the smartest one, and she is such a
Hmm.
brilliant character, but her being around him makes her see the big picture. And
Yeah,
at the same time, him being around her helps him see the big picture. Like, yes,
I
you
agree
want to
with
get
that.
your mom back, but also, do you realize what a war with the gods will do? The last
Yep.
time the gods went to war was World War II. So
Yeah.
we can't have that.
I agree with what you're talking about and how he needed this side character and she needed him as well to kind of
Mm-hmm.
balance each other out. And interestingly, so as I was watching, I said, "Okay, so did you try to just rewrite Harry Potter?" And so I looked it up because I was like, "Okay, what came first?" Because I know these were books and I was like, "This is feeling very Harry Potter right now." I was like, yeah,
It
getting to the.
does.
It's like, okay, you've got the like super smart chick who should be the main character but isn't because she's a girl. Um,
Ooh. Yeah,
yeah,
Hermione really is the best.
Hermione's the best.
She
She
really is the
is.
best.
She is the hero of the story, but it's called Harry Potter.
Yeah.
You've got the Harry Potter kid treated terribly, always weird and different, didn't know
Mm-hmm.
why. Poof, all of a sudden, here you go. So I looked it up, and the author was essentially talking about, like, no, I didn't copy. I mean, of course, they're going to say no, but no, I didn't copy it, and was kind of talking about, like, I actually took the. Now, this is a great point. I took it from these stories that have been around for, a really long time and then was talking about how having the really smart side character and varying the sex of the characters and all that stuff is very common and I think there's a really good point to this piece of we require other people and confidants and they first had a little bit of an adversarial thing but
Mm-hmm.
and he brought her along because okay, someone I call a friend is going to break my trust, so let me take someone that I do not see in that way.
Which
um
kudos
Smart.
to him, right?
Smart.
Like I'm just like
Smarter than
this
Harry
guy.
Potter.
Oh, way better. Okay, so first things first. If I had to pick a series like between
Mm.
Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, I'm gonna pick Percy Jackson every time. Uh, and also Rick Riordan is so. I'm not gonna lie. Like when comparing Harry Potter to Percy Jackson, Percy Jackson's so much more progressive. It
Okay, okay.
Yes, it really is. In the books later on, there are trans characters there, and
Oh, yes,
also
okay.
he does other book series that
Mm.
deal with like Native American gods and Egyptian gods. And
Nice. Yeah.
instead of writing them, he actually got people from that culture to
Oh my
write
god.
the books. And so like he's great.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
All right.
he's great.
I'm Team Percy Jackson.
Yeah, he's great.
You won me over. I mean, it's still, the kick-ass female character isn't the
Yeah.
main character, but I can let
And
that
they
go.
changed
I
that. In the books, she was white. And in the TV show,
uh,
yeah, they changed it. They changed it. Which I mean, it's Greek gods. If you can't get weird about that. Like you can, it's
oh, about switching. Yeah,
yeah,
I that's my thing too. Like, you get to look, race is a social construct,
yes,
and we have made that social construct into something very real.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, I actually, you and I have a friend in common who is Greek, and I remember she had a conversation with this group of girls who were black, and I think she was dancing or I don't remember. Um, uh, and essentially they were like, "You're close enough."
You can
Because she was
come
like,
to the
"Oh, I'm
cookout.
yeah." She was like dancing, or I don't know, something about she's got a nice like round badonk, and like they said something about the white girl, and she was like, "Oh, I'm Greek," and they were like, "Oh, that's close enough." So like constructs. I'm totally
Yeah,
with you.
yeah, and so
And
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Okay. I'm Team Percy Jackson then. All
yeah.
right, I'm with you.
It's a great
And,
series, and
yeah.
there's way more books too. Like yeah, there's
All right.
yeah,
Maybe I'll read it. I don't know. We'll
yeah.
see.
I think, I'm pretty sure the TV show's already been renewed for a second season. So you know
Yeah,
what?
here's the thing about the show. I'm gonna be honest. I felt a little old to be watching it.
I see what you mean. I
It
see what you
felt
mean.
I knew I wasn't the demographic they were going for,
Right.
and that doesn't always bother me. There are just certain I don't know, there was a certain vibe about it that I don't always get when I'm reading young adult
Hmm.
books, but sometimes you do. I don't the books might feel different. And then the ending of it just felt like and the end. Like
Yeah.
my friend betrayed me. Da, 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 the end. And
And
there were certain things like that and other shifts and character things that just I was like,
and I will say it's one long story. So like that
okay.
first, like the way that it wraps is exactly how it begins in the next book. It's like, yep, Luke
Okay.
did what he did, and this is bad, and it looks like the gods are going to go to war, and we're in book two. And
Okay.
yeah, and
Okay.
so it is one long progressing story. It's
Mm,
not,
okay.
yeah, yeah,
And don't get me I mean like I enjoyed watching it. I just there were definitely times where I felt I could definitely feel that I was not the main demographic, which is totally fine.
yeah,
Um but yeah, I did find it interesting. And going back to what you were talking about with Percy and what's the chick's name again?
Annabelle.
Annabeth.
Hmm.
Um, I loved how they played off of each other and Grover too. And that's the thing I think that is something in common with a lot of really great character development, particularly in books that I feel like shift really well to TV and movies.
Hmm.
Is it's not about just the character; it's about the character and the people around them, and in particular having these like close ties and connections where they all impact each other and grow and for better and for worse.
Hmm.
But you just get to see the humanness and the growth in how they connect with each other and move through things together. So
Yeah.
I definitely liked that a lot.
Another thing that I do like is because it's dealing with the Greek pantheon,
Mm,
the characters, whether it's the gods themselves or their children, have certain traits that certainly exist in the real world.
mm,
And it's like, okay, how am I going to bounce off of all this aggressiveness? How am I going to bounce off
mm,
all of this overthinking and overanalyzing situations? How am I going to bounce off all of this running away? Like, and
mm-hmm,
it's really cool how it's like, oh, they're this god is this, and this is their story, and this is why they are the way they are, and it's like, wow, like if it's very clear early on that all of the Greek pantheon could use therapy, right? Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I think that's the funny thing too is okay. I mean, so we think of a mythos
Hmm.
with, but this was a religion. And
Yes.
it's actually really funny to think of this as this religion versus say Christianity, which here in the United States is one that we're most familiar with. Um, and so here are these deities that are very human
Hmm.
versus in Christianity. First off, you have the one
Hmm.
in that specific religion, but it's all about perfection.
Right.
Uh, and so it's very interesting, and I actually honestly kind of love how yeah, all these deities are, they just like anyone else
Yeah.
with great, with these really great strengths and powers
Hmm.
comes some really fallible weaknesses.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
very, very interesting. And Percy has to I mean, he was learning one thing to his mom's credit is granted it was make believe stuff, but she was prepping him this whole time
She
with knowledge
was.
about everything and making sure he understood the mythos behind all this stuff. Um, but how strange to then
It,
have these things become a reality and then yeah, he's got to strategize essentially this whole time.
she kind of prepped him. it's
Yeah.
still a whole lot. Like if like I grew up hearing the story of the three bears, right?
Mm,
And if I finally grew up and someone was like, "Hey, by the way, Keaton, bears actually do sometimes live in houses and make soup." It's not going to affect me the way that it's not. I would be intrigued and definitely raise an eyebrow, but I'm like, okay, so I'm just not going to trespass. Like, I can deal.
mm,
I can deal. I don't like camping anyway. Like, it'll be fine. But all of that being true, and also
mm.
not only that, guess what? You're a main character.
Yeah. That's that's a and actually I think that's a really great way of summarizing that whole shift for him. Is he went from I mean, I guess in some ways he was a hesitant main character. I
Yeah,
mean, he would pull focus, but really, I mean, he was trying to be a background character.
yeah.
And he was not the main character of his story in that he wasn't getting hit he wasn't being treated fairly.
No, he was.
Other people and what they wanted and what they cared about was being put first constantly, and then all of a
Yes.
sudden he's plopped square in the middle.
Right in the middle of it. Hey, Percy, by the way, there's a war starting because
Mhm.
everyone thinks that you stole
Oh
Zeus's
yeah.
lightning bolt for your dad that you've never met. Also, your mom's in hell.
There
Lunchtime.
you go.
Like
Yeah. Yep.
it's it's rough, but like he rolls with the punches so well. He does.
He even takes not being good at things very well too. He's just like warning everybody, like, I don't know how this is gonna go. You might want to move.
Like,
I
yeah,
wouldn't I wouldn't recommend being close by.
yeah.
You're right. He does. He's pretty easygoing about things and lets it roll off his back like a
Hmm.
wave. There you go. His like maybe it's the water thing for him. Um, I mean, there are a lot of ways to react to what happened for him growing up, but it always helps when, no matter how much chaos there is, if you have constants. If
Yes.
you like his mom is a constant. Now, they're not always getting along, they're not always on the same page. There's some really tough stuff they have to deal with, and we don't necessarily agree with all the choices she made.
Right.
And he always knew that she loved him,
Yes.
and he always knew she was on his side, and they were a constant for each other. And then he also had
Yes.
Grover, who granted was, lying to him, but
Yeah.
he also had
And
Grover
24
and
years old.
yeah. Yeah, well.
Little strange. It's a
Yeah,
little strange, but it
but
is what it is.
how old is that in goat years? Like
I they I don't know. They really I don't know about that one. I don't know. You know what?
let's
Yeah.
not think about that one
Let's
too
not think
hard.
about that one too much. We won't.
Mm.
We won't. But I will say, like, I do love when you see parents portrayed as being loving parents despite having some flaws, because
Yep.
so many times in media, parents will be either portrayed as the best parent ever,
Mm,
like the Waynes,
yeah.
or just horrible parents. And there's never it I feel like we're finally getting to this moment now where it's like, look, human parents,
Mhm.
they love their children, they want to do everything they can to help their children, but they are not perfect, and that's okay.
Mhm.
That's okay, because you really are doing the best you can, because you have this kid, because she's in a bad spot too,
Oh
right?
yeah,
She's
she's
in a
in
bad
such a
spot
tricky
too.
spot.
And one thing I remember when I had our first kid, I can't remember who told me this, but it was one of those things that really stuck out. They said, you got to understand, you're watching them grow up and they're watching you grow up at the exact same time.
Mm.
Um, because being a parent is just it's something that's on another level, and you're scared and you're worried and you're just doing the very best you can. And so even though I'm like, why didn't she tell him, like, man, if I was in the same situation, I don't know what the hell I would do. I don't know how to tell you a thing as your mom. Like, what? Like, I don't Like,
I know. And then
yeah,
also, don't forget that a literal god, one of the most powerful 3,
yeah,
said, "Don't tell him."
right,
And he wasn't menacing about it.
right,
But come on, she's like an aunt to
right.
him.
Every time a hurricane happens, it's like, that's you, right?
Great point.
That's you,
In a
right?
flood, hurricane, yeah.
Like that tsunami,
Tsunami.
was that
Mhm.
that was so were you just did you just get bad service there? Like what the hell? You know
Had a
what?
little temper tantrum.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
So yeah, you know what? I'm gonna give the mom a pass.
Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JVS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.